Good morning. My name is Eli Howes. Can you please tell me your full name?
My full name is Shirley. You can call me Shirley.
Oh, okay. Now, Shirley, in this first part, I'd like to ask you some questions about yourself. Let's talk about where you live. Do you live in a city or a town?
Um, I'm living in Taiwan, and I'm living in a city. So it's kind of like a center of Taichung. So I would say it's a very, very modern city.
Mm. And for you, what are the benefits of living in a city?
There are lots of benefits. First of all, I'll think about is public transportation. It is very convenient, so you don't need to pay a lot of money to. You don't need to have your private cars, or you just need to take the public transport to go anywhere.
Mm. And is there anything you dislike about living in the city?
Mm, one thing pop into my mind is the competition with others. So um, many people they will learn a lot of skills and improve themselves after work time. So um, that means you need to improve yourself in your leisure time.
Hmm. Let's move on. Let's talk about birthdays. What do you usually do on your birthday?
In the past, I used to celebrate with some of my friends. However, nowadays, I usually celebrate with my families, and that's it. Not nothing special on my birthday. Just like a birthday cake, and then I blow the candle, and that's it.
Mm. And do you think it's important for people to celebrate their birthday?
That's a good question. Well, I think it depends on people preferences. If a person wants love likes the crowd likes someone to celebrate their birthday, that's important for him or her. However, for someone who likes to be alone, they probably just don't want to be reminded that they're getting older.
Mm. Are there any special things that people do in Taiwan to celebrate their birthday?
Let me think about it. Some of my friends will go to club or pubs to unwind and relax there with friends. Um, and some of the elders they might have a cup of tea in a cafe with friends. So it depends on your age and your preferences.
Mm. Let's move on. Let's talk about names. Does your name have a special meaning?
I think so. My name is made from a fortune teller, and he gave me the name. I had the surname because of my dad, obviously. It is like rooted from him. My second name, my second name, my first name has a meaning of like a bright future and lucky flowers, like lucky tree leaves, like that.
So, how do people choose names for their children in your country?
Oh, well, they will see their birthday time and their know their sex and also decided the name stroke to see whether it's good for that baby.
Mm.
Mm.
And does anyone have the same name as you in your family?
I I didn't see anyone have any same name as me, but in the past, my mom aged at like older generation, they probably had common names when because they didn't have much information about naming their children.
Mm.
Mm.
Okay, Shirley, I'm going to give you a topic and I'd like you to talk about it for 1 to 2 minutes. Before you talk,
Okay.
you'll have 1 minute to think about what you're going to say and you can make some notes if you wish. Do you understand?
Yep.
All right, remember you have 1 to 2 minutes for this, so don't worry if I stop you. I'll tell you when the time is up. Can you start speaking now, please?
Yes. Well, I'd like to share a person who I know have known her for a couple years, and that she really enjoys growing plants. She has been growing greens and fruits for around donkey years, I would say, because back in Sri Lanka, she said that she had a big mountain and she has been growing tea leaves and vegetables, fruits there. Her name is Christine. I knew her because of work. She was my colleague when I was working in Melbourne in a childcare center. Um, I will say she is really an expert in growing plants because she had when I visited her, she had a big backyard, and she grows like different kinds of fruits and vegetables such as tomato, and beans, and even like jasmine teas, the jasmine. Um, so she grows in an organic way because she believes that chemicals are kind of damage for our body, um, and so she grew her own soil and then put it on the plants and watering them every day. I feel like I should learn more from her if I had a backyard, a big backyard, and then I can make myself healthier and more fit. Um, then I don't need to go to like supermarket to carry a big basket to purchase
Thank you.
those things.
Thank you. Do you think you'll spend more time with her in the future?
For sure, she was one of my favorite.
Mm. All right. So we've been talking about someone you know that likes to grow plants and flowers, and I'd like to discuss with you 1 or 2 more general questions related to this. Let's consider first of all people that like to spend a lot of time in their garden. But why do you think lots of people really enjoy spending time in their garden, growing plants, growing flowers, that kind of thing?
Um, I'll say it depends on whether you have any leisure time and your age and your hobbies. So, I noticed that many elders they love to do their gardenings because that's like when you visit their places, you can see wow, their homes are very beautiful with flowers or greens there. But for teenagers or adults, if they are very busy in their hectic life, they probably don't have time to do those things.
Mm. How do you think that teenagers and adults like to relax if they're not gardening?
Sorry, can you say it again?
Yep. So if elderly people often like to garden as a way to relax and to unwind, how do
Yeah.
teenagers like to relax and unwind?
Mm, from my observation,
Mhm.
uh, I think they like to play on their video games or browse on their social medias
Mhm.
and then invite their friends out for dinner or lunch. That's kind of a way they unwind and relax.
Mhm. Do you think that because elderly people get so much satisfaction out of gardening, that the government should subsidize how gardens to be used by the elderly?
Ooh, um, Yeah, sure. I think it's kind of a good idea if governments can subsidize those elderly to do gardening, because first thing, it is very eco-friendly for our environment. Second, that's kind of a hobby to that the elders to do during their probably post work life. So yeah, I think I totally agree with this.
Yes. Let's move on. Let's now talk about eating healthily. Do you think it's important for schools to make sure that the children in schools that eat there have access to fresh vegetables and fruit, for example, at lunch and during their snacks?
Definitely. For from my experiences, when I had placement in different schools, I saw that they have the nutrition list every week. They need to send to parents or post on the website to make sure that the children in their schools have very good nutrition and very healthy diet. Even if it's snacks or morning tea, those are emphasized to be made by like the chef. Yeah.
Right. And is it you've worked in Australia and you've also lived in Taiwan. Is there a difference between the approach to healthy eating in schools in these two countries?
There are some similarities and differences. I will emphasize the differences. Um, for example, for Australian children, they will have morning tea, lunch, afternoon tea, and late snack. But in Taiwan, normally, like in some public school, um, schools just provide lunch instead of these like varieties of diet or meals for children. So that's kind of difference between the amount of food they have.
Mm. Do you think that schools should ever provide food that's unhealthy but very tasty? So things like fish and chips, pizzas, burgers, just because it's a bit of a treat for children.
If if it's like sometimes to have it, I'll disagree with it. But if it's like having it seldom in a seldom time, like once to twice a month, I will agree with it, because when having those food, children will know children will have a sense of community, like they know like sense of belonging, that oh, that is served because you can purchase in the normal life. And also they can do some DIY when they're making a wrap or a burger. They will know exactly what they really like. They can ask for more if they want to add on their burgers. Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much, Shirley. That's the end of the speaking test.
Thank you, Abby.
So, how did you feel?
I feel like very comfortable to speak with you.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it seemed to me that you got more and more comfortable towards the end. Like
Yeah.
in part three, I would say part three was your best. You started
Oh,
part one, part two, and then part three just got better and better, I think, which is
yeah.
actually usually the opposite way around. Normally, what
Yeah.
happens is people do very well in part one, and then part two, they find it a bit more difficult. And in part three, when the more difficult questions come out, they find it more difficult. But
When I was nervous, I would just my brain will freeze
mm,
for a second. So I think I need to more relax when I'm taking a test.
right, but you've got quite a lot of experience doing tests because you've said you've done the IELTS test quite a number of times. Is that right?
Yeah, like 6 times.
Yeah. And so you were saying that even your speaking scores varied quite a lot. The lowest you've got is 7, and the highest
Yeah,
you've got is
8.5.
8.5. So for this test, I'd be giving you around 7.5 and 8. So I'd
Mhm,
have to really go back and think about whether you get to that band 8. Um, in part 1, I was convinced that you were 7.5, and then in part 3, I was convinced that you were band 8. So that's
mm,
why I would actually go back and watch this or listen to this again if I were your official examiner.
okay.
And what I'm going to do is I'll be editing this video, so I'll have a chance to watch it again and to give you a more solid answer. But that's also in line with what you've got in the past. You said the lowest you've got is 7, and the highest you've got is 8.5. So definitely
Mhm,
you're somewhere in that range. So one thing that's great is you've got amazing fluency. You're very
mm,
clear, and it's very easy to follow you. It's very easy to follow your ideas, and you don't hesitate very much. You know, you speak at quite a solid pace, you vary the speed of your voice, and you're very good at introducing discourse markers and fillers. So things like,
mm,
um, I would say instead of in my opinion, or
mhm,
I think. So you have lots of these. You have lots of phrases like, there are a lot of benefits, first of all. Um,
mhm,
in part 3, you said there are some similarities and differences. I'll emphasize the differences. These kinds of fillers and ways to organize your speech will help you to get a very high score for fluency and coherence, which is a real strong suit for you. um, your pronunciation is also very, very good. It's you know you've got is it an Australian or is it an American accent? Is it because I thought it might be an Australian accent because you've lived there, but I actually thought it sounded more American.
when I was a kindergarten children, I was studying in American school, so and it's like a mix.
Right.
Yeah.
That's interesting, yeah. But it's very easy to understand you. Sometimes there were little words that you would pronounce incorrectly, like I think you said purchase instead of
Yeah.
purchase.
Oh, purchase.
Yeah,
Okay.
purchase. And sometimes at sentence level, you would put the stress on the wrong word. But
Oh.
this was a minor problem. Most of the time, your pronunciation was very, very high. Your lexical resource is very, very good as well. That would be definitely a band 8. You had lots of great phrases that you use appropriately. um, little things like browse the internet or browse social media. Although be careful with the pronunciation. I think you said something like browse, but it'd be browse with more of a Z sound at the end. Browse,
Browse.
browse.
Mm,
Things like
browse.
eco-friendly. Also, when you were in part 2, you were talking about your friend that likes to grow flowers, and you had so many good words for describing that. You were talking about soil, plants, watering plants, backyard. So you had a lot of topic specific vocabulary. Also the chemicals that she puts in the garden or doesn't put in her garden. So you really showed that you can speak about a lot of different topics with ease. So your pronunciation was very good. And then probably the lowest, and this is the reason you might get 7.5 instead of 8, was a few grammar mistakes that would lower your score. So I've written some notes, and what we'll do is we'll go through them together, so
Mhm,
so that we can pick up on some of the good language and some of the mistakes. So to begin with, I
yeah.
really liked that you say "I would say." So you use that as a synonym phrase for "I think." That's great.
Mm,
I love things like there are a lot of benefits, first of all, very good. That's given to give you a high score for fluency and coherence.
mm,
You said one thing pops into my mind is, which is great,
mm,
except remember the that. One thing that pops into my mind is.
that. Mhm.
And again, pops into my mind is a great idiomatic phrase there, so that's going to get you a higher score. You said many people they will. So what you do there is you're repeating the subject because you're saying many people they will. So you get rid of there,
Oh,
you just many people will.
well, yeah.
Yeah. I really like this. You said in the past I used to celebrate my birthday by da da da. However,
Mm,
nowadays I usually da 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 celebrate with my So those kind of sentence structures are great when you're talking about the past. Did you learn them in a class, or was that natural for you?
I saw your video. I saw your course. You
Ah,
emphasize that in writing.
right, right,
Writing.
right.
Yeah.
Yes, yes, because often
Yes.
that's really good for introductions, for essays as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that was brilliant. Um, One thing you did say families, but it'd be family uncountable. So I like to spend time with my family.
Okay. Yeah.
Mhm. I loved phrases like "it depends on people's preferences." Absolutely
Mm,
brilliant. Um, and you're very good at saying "it depends on" and then expanding on what it depends on. You did that in part one. You also did that in part three, and that's really,
mhm.
really good. You said if someone a lot likes to, so you got the word order wrong. If someone likes to something a lot,
Oh, yeah.
yeah. So that was in part one. If I'll send you the video afterwards, and you can have a little watch of that and
Okay.
correct it with your correct it before your actual test. I also liked phrases like "to unwind with friends" as a synonym for kind of how to relax with them.
Mm.
Um, and again, you repeated subject again in this sentence. You said, "I'd like to share a person who I've known her for donkey's years or for a long time." So it'd be, "I'd like to talk about a person who I've
Yeah.
known for many years." So you
Who
don't
I've
need to,
known.
who I've known for many years,
Yeah.
or you can say donkey's years as well. That's fine.
Mm.
Um, you said, I would say she's really an expert in." Yeah, so that's fine to be an expert in something, great. Um, and your description of her was really, really good, and her backyard and how she grows things in an organic way, how chemicals are. You said chemicals are damage for our body, but the adjective would be damaging. Chemicals are damaging for our body.
Oh.
Yeah. And then you had so much good vocabulary for describing her process, like soil, plants, watering, backyard, chemicals, an organic way of growing vegetables. That stuff was great. That's going to really get you a high score. In part three, you had lots of lovely phrases like "I would say it depends on whether you have leisure time." That's great. You often say elders, and you can say elders, but I would sometimes change elders to elderly people. So you said, "I've noticed that many elders like to grow plants." I would also just
Mhm.
occasionally say, "I've noticed that many elderly people like to grow
Others.
plants." I
Mhm.
would say, personally, I think I say elderly people more than describing old people as elders.
Mhm.
I liked phrases like "from my observation," and I really, really, really liked when I asked you a question, you went, "Ooh." I think it was,
Sorry.
but that was great. That shows that you're interacting with the examiner and
Yeah.
you're interacting with the question. So stuff like that is absolutely brilliant. More great vocabulary was stuff like eco-friendly, post-work life, talking about retired people, um, and talking about children having snacks at school. Um, And then at the very end, there was a kind of mistake that made me think actually 7.5 is a better score than 8. And that was this. You said, "if it's sometimes, I'll disagree with it." And then you said, "but if it's in a seldom time." So we don't really say "in a seldom time." So if I was to communicate that message, I'd say, um, if the school serves pizza infrequently, then I agree with it. However, if it's too often or too regular, then I would disagree with the school serving pizza.
Mm,
Um,
mm,
so I see that you wanted to use that word seldom, but you just
yeah.
need to use it correctly. So yeah, so as,
Mm,
as long as they only serve pizza seldomly, then I think it's okay, but not
mm,
in a seldom time. And then
yeah.
a lovely phrase that you ended on as well: sense of belonging. So
Yeah.
yeah. Great vocabulary. So what I'm going to do is I'll send you this video in a second, and then I'll put the subtitles, the vocabulary, and I'll be putting that version on YouTube. Although it might take a week or several weeks. When is it? When have you got your next IELTS test?
February 22nd.
February 22nd. Okay, so you've got like a month and a half. All right. Well, the video will be up before then, and so you'll be able to learn from a lot of the vocabulary that I put here in the subtitles. Yeah.
Will you provide any good like topic, vocabulary related to topic while in a document?
Yeah. So the best thing to do for that is because so you're a premium member of English Pro Tips. If you go to
Yeah,
the speaking questions, then
yeah,
you get model answers for lots of different speaking questions, and you'll get useful vocabulary from those answers. So
mm,
that will help you learn vocabulary related to specific speaking questions. And then in the vocabulary course, you'll find a PDF of vocabulary for lots of different topics. So topics
mhm.
like the environment, wildlife, buildings and cities, the economy, stuff like that. That'll help you.
Do you have any suggestion for me, like for using your your online resources? How can I improve my reading, writing? Like how, because there are different sections, right? Um, do I spend a day on writing and finish all writing and move on to reading, or like I don't know how to make make it a routine to make sure I can practice all before my test.
Yeah. So I've noticed that we're about to run out of time on this Zoom.
Yeah, yeah.
So what I'm going to do is I'll send you a little study plan that
Oh, thank
some
you.
students have used before that have helped them to
Yeah,
get a higher score.
yeah.
So I'll send you that. I'll send you the video, and I'll also send you an interview I've done with some students that have got band 8, band 8.5, and band 9 in the past. So that'll help you.
Thank you.
All right,
Yeah,
Shirley, thank you very much for coming today. It was a real pleasure to speak to you.
it's my pleasure to having this session with you. Thank you.
Right, okay, bye there.